Hey everyone, and welcome. Today we're going to dive into the art of teaching. We'll uncover some pretty common traps that, let's be honest, even the best of us fall into. But more importantly, we'll reveal one crucial shift in how you think that can totally transform your classroom.
So it all boils down to this one simple question, right? We all think we know what a great teacher looks like, but what if the real answer isn't what we expect? What if it has less to do with how you perform at the front of the room and way more to do with something else entirely?
And here it is. This is the big idea. The secret to really effective teaching isn't about your lecture style or your presentation skills. Nope. It's about starting with the learner. Everything, and I mean everything, has to flow from their perspective.
But, before we can rebuild our approach, we've got to understand the foundation we're working with. Most teaching philosophies are built on four key pillars. Let's just quickly break those down. So, traditionally, it's these four things, right? You've got your own knowledge, how you manage the classroom, the relationship you build with your students, and, of course, understanding what they need. Now, all of these are absolutely important, don't get me wrong, but it's the order we put them in. That's what we're here to challenge today. All right, let's switch gears for a second. We're going to do a quick little quiz. This is all about self-reflection, so I want you to be really honest with yourself as we go through a few super common and usually totally unintentional teaching traps. You ready? First one up. Are you a broken radio? Just think about it for a second. In your classroom, who's doing most of the talking? Let's unpack what this really means for your students. A broken radio is pretty much what it sounds like. A teacher who just talks and talks, dominating the whole conversation. The goal should be to completely flip that. You want to aim for something like 30% teacher talk and 70% student talk. Why? Because that gives them the space to actually process, to participate, to try things out. After all, they're the ones who need the practice, right? Not you. Okay, next up. Have you ever been a pause eater? This one is so subtle, and a lot of us do it without even noticing. Let's see if this sounds a little too familiar. So a pause eater is a teacher who is kind of afraid of silence. You ask a question, and nothing. Crickets. It feels awkward, so you jump in to fill that quiet space. But that silence? That's when the magic is happening. You're actually robbing your students of the precious time they need to think and put an answer together. And our final trap is a very close cousin to the pause-ator. So ask yourself this: are you a self-answering teacher? This is what happens when you ask a question and then almost immediately you just give the answer yourself. It completely defeats the whole point of asking in the first place. What could have been a dialogue just becomes a monologue, and you lose any real chance to check if they've actually understood the concept. Okay, so we've named the traps: the broken radio, the pause eater, and the self-answering teacher. The big question is, what do we do about it? How do we avoid them? Well, the answer lies in one fundamental shift in how we see things. And that brings us right to the heart of this entire explainer. I want to share a simple phrase that I think of as the golden rule of teaching. It's a complete change in perspective that, once you really get it, changes pretty much everything about how you teach. Here it is. Learnability determines teachability. Just let that sit for a moment. It sounds so simple, but it is incredibly profound. So what does it actually mean in practice? It means that your success as a teacher isn't about how brilliantly you can explain something. It's measured by how well your student can learn it. The starting point for every single lesson, every activity, every explanation, it's not you, it's them. It's where they are right now, what they need, and their ability to actually take in what you're giving them. So, if we accept this golden rule, then our first job becomes crystal clear. We have to understand our learners. And the single most important thing to figure out is their motivation. Why are they sitting in your classroom? What's really driving them? Now, generally speaking, you can boil motivation down into two big categories. You've got intrinsic motivation, which is that fire that comes from within, and you've got extrinsic motivation, which comes from some kind of outside pressure or reward. And the difference becomes really obvious with a few examples. Intrinsic motivation is learning because you just love a culture, or you're fascinated by languages, or maybe it's just plain fun. Extrinsic motivation, on the other hand, is learning because you need to, for a better job, for immigration, or to pass a class you're required to take. One comes from passion, the other from necessity. Okay, and here's where it all clicks into place. Once you understand their motivation, The why. That becomes the key that unlocks what they actually need to learn, the what. This is the last step that makes your teaching truly hit the mark. Let's use a quick case study to see exactly how this works. I want you to meet Rodrigo. We can break his whole situation down into 3 simple steps. First, his motivation, his why. Then his needs, the what. And finally, that tells us how to teach him, the how.
So, let's follow the logic. Rodrigo's motivation, his why, is extrinsic. He wants to get a master's degree. Okay, that directly tells us what his needs are. He has to be able to understand lectures, write academic papers, and give presentations. Boom. Just like that, our teaching focus is crystal clear. We're not going to waste time on casual conversation or reading literature. We're going to focus laser-like on the academic skills he needs to succeed. His why defines our what.
And this brings us right back around to a final question I want to leave you with. After all this, after looking at the traps and the golden rule, I want you to ask yourself, are you just teaching your subject, or are you actively creating the conditions for learnability? Because the difference between those 2 approaches is everything. Thanks for joining this explainer.